you're going to need a large mixing bowl, a measuring cup, and some measuring spoons. So then you want 1 cup of warm water, slightly lukewarm, about 100 Fahrenheit, slightly warmer than body temperature. And to that we will add one tablespoon of white sugar. Then we mix that in until it's fully dissolved. Then we need 2 teaspoons of instant yeast. Just buy this at the supermarket. One. Two. And we give that a good mix. Then we let that sit until it starts proofing, about 5 or 10 minutes. When the mixture the yeast is foaming on the top of the water like this, we can then add 2 teaspoons of salt, and 1 tablespoon of vegetable oil. This is coconut oil, but any vegetable oil will do. Give that a quick mix, and then we're going to add 3 cups of flour, 1 cup at a time. So that's about 1 cup. Now I'm using a dough whisk here, but any sort of stiffish spatula will do. It gets quite hard going when it's with the last cup. So we mix the first cup in. Chuck in the second cup. Measure out a third cup, or approximately. Chuck that in. Starts getting quite difficult to work now. This is where the dough whisk is quite handy, because it sort of cuts through the lumps of dough and mixes it. And you get to a point where you can't it's all sticking to the spatula, and we're not really making much progress now. So we'll get rid of the whisk. Try and keep the dough in the bowl. Scrape off the other bits. And then we've just got to mix it by hand now. Try and just get all the dough, all the dry flour mixed into this mixture. And it starts forming into one big lump. And then at some point you start, about now, you start kneading it. I just use the heel of my hand. And it just takes up the dry flour as you go. Now it starts getting quite sticky at this point once all the flour's up. So when it gets like this, I just add a bit more flour. So you want it sticky, but not too sticky. You want it so it doesn't stick to your hand. Ultimately that's where we want to get to. And Once the dough is not sticking to my hand, it's about the right consistency. So it quickly soaks up the dry flour, so then we add a bit more. So it's starting to get close now. It's starting to come off my hand back onto the ball of dough. Maybe just a little bit more flour. That's about right now. It just grabs on my hand, but it's not leaving great clumps of dough on there. In fact, it's cleaning off the dough that's on my hand. That's about it. Just a couple more. Right, so now we just leave this for 1 hour. I'll cover it with a damp cloth, or you can cover it with Glad wrap. Okay, so this is my damp cloth. I'm just going to put that over the top. That'll just keep any heat in that's generated by the rising dough. And we'll just leave that for an hour, and we'll come back and see how much it's risen. Okay, so 1 hour later, you can see the bread has risen. Now, what we do is we press this down to get all the air out of it, and then we're going to knead it a little bit more. So press all the air out, and then start stretching it and folding it. See, it's a lot more elastic now and sticky again. So stretch it and fold it on top of itself. Rotate the bowl as we go. It gets a bit less stretchy as you go. Okay, that's probably enough. So we'll just put that to one side. Now, put down some baking paper on the bench. Just going to sprinkle some flour on that, and I'll also sprinkle a little bit of flour on the dough. And then I'm going to lift it out of the bowl, put it down on the sprinkled flour, and I just want to coat it in flour. Roll it around a bit, and so it's not sticky anymore because it's got flour on it. Now you notice this side, this underside is the side I was folding on top of itself, so I'm going to put it with that side down. Just make it into a nice little ball. And now I'm just going to leave it there for about another 30 minutes to rise again. I forgot to mention at this point I can turn on the oven to 250 and put in a baking dish. I just use a Pyrex ceramic baking dish like this. Put that in the oven for half an hour while this dough rises. Okay, so you can see that the dough's risen again. I'll just put this to one side, and I'll go and get the very hot baking dish from the oven. carefully pick up the dough here. I'll turn it over and drop it in there. So this is the side that we were turning in earlier, so that's now facing up. Now what I like to do is just slash the top of this with a very sharp knife. I use a razor blade in this handle, just to let it allows the bread to expand as it cooks, and it also gives it a nice artisanal look on the top. Then we pop the lid on and I'll put it back in the oven. I'll turn the heat down to about 180 and leave it for 15 minutes with the lid on. So after 15 minutes you can see that it's risen. I'm going to take off the lid now. And leave it in there for about another 15 or 20 minutes. So 20 minutes later, it's looking pretty good. So I think we'll take that out now. Then I just put it on a cooling rack to cool down for about an hour before eating it.